The vast and unforgiving galaxy stretched out before Earth, a sprawling tapestry of stars, planets, and distant civilizations. Earth, once insignificant in the galactic landscape, had fought to earn its place within the interstellar alliance. Its technological advancements had allowed it to thrive, but it remained a newcomer among ancient and powerful empires that had shaped the galaxy for millennia. The quiet hum of space stations, orbiting alien planets, and the pulse of intergalactic trade routes felt both reassuring and daunting. For Earth, a species that had once looked up to the stars with awe and wonder, the universe now felt like a vast unknown, filled with unspoken dangers. Earth had much to offer, its technology, its resilience, but even the most optimistic among its leaders couldn't shake the feeling that its newfound position was precarious. The galaxy, alive with intelligent species, some peaceful, others aggressive, loomed over the planet like an unpredictable storm. Every step forward felt like walking a tightrope, with the threat of cosmic chaos always a heartbeat away, and yet humanity stood at the precipice of something far more dangerous than they had ever imagined. The Zarnak Empire, a brutal and militaristic, alien species, cast its shadow over Earth. Known for their immense power and ruthless tactics, the Zarnak were a force that had crushed empires and annihilated civilizations. They were technologically far ahead of humanity, their weaponry capable of wiping out entire fleets with terrifying efficiency. The blockade, at first, seemed like a mere political strategy, a way to pressure Earth into submission. But as weeks turned into months, the situation escalated, and it became clear. The Zarnak were preparing for more than just a show of strength. Their ships, vast and terrifying, filled the skies. The blockade was no longer a simple act of diplomacy. It was a threat, an ultimatum. The Zarnak would stop at nothing to secure their dominance, and Earth was their next target. In the midst of this rising tension stood Captain Elias Carter, a man who had seen the horrors of war and felt the weight of countless decisions on his shoulders. A battle-hardened officer, Carter had risen through the ranks of Earth's military with unmatched tactical brilliance. His reputation as a leader was undeniable, but behind his stoic demeanor was a man who bore the scars of past conflicts, both physical and emotional. The loss of comrades, the weight of responsibility haunted him. He was humanity's last line of defense, a leader tasked with preparing his people for the unimaginable. His crew, an eclectic mix of military personnel and scientists, trusted him implicitly, but Carter knew the stakes were higher than ever before. Earth had never faced a threat like the Zarnak, and the choices he made would determine whether humanity stood a chance at survival or fell into the dust of history. When the Zarnak delivered their ultimatum, the fate of Earth was sealed. The message was clear: surrender or face annihilation. The galaxy trembled at the thought of the Zarnak's fleet descending upon Earth, and the leaders of the Intergalactic Alliance weighed their options. Earth's response was divided. Some saw surrender as the only option, an attempt to preserve what was left. Others, led by Carter, believed in fighting for survival. The Council of Alien Leaders hesitated, unsure of where their allegiances would lie. The decision to fight or surrender would set the stage for Earth's future, and Carter knew that once the Zarnak's ultimatum was accepted, there would be no turning back. The countdown had begun, and Carter had no choice but to prepare for war. The Zarnak fleet loomed ominously above Earth, their ships massive and intimidating, encircling the planet in an unyielding blockade. The sky, once a vast and peaceful expanse, was now a battlefield, a silent, suffocating prison. Their presence was everywhere, an unspoken declaration of power. Earth, with all its technological advancements, could do little but watch as the Zarnak closed in, their ships towering over Earth's once pristine space stations. The blockade was more than a show of strength. It was the first move in a far more terrifying game. Earth's military, though advanced, was no match for the Zarnak's overwhelming technology. Their weapons, their fleet, their tactics, everything was designed for conquest. Humanity had no choice but to prepare for the inevitable, the terrifying reality that the Zarnak were not merely making demands, they were planning to wipe out Earth entirely. As Carter stood on the bridge of Earth's flagship, his eyes scanned the approaching fleet, his mind racing with the reality of their situation. This was no longer a mere political dispute. It was war. The Zarnak's fleet stretched across the horizon, a stark reminder of the impossible odds Earth now faced. Attempts at diplomacy had already failed, negotiations had crumbled under the weight of the Zarnak's arrogance, and now humanity was left with one stark choice: survival. Carter felt the weight of every decision, every command that would come next. Humanity had always been a latecomer to the galactic stage, insignificant in the eyes of the galaxy's ancient powers. But now, with the Zarnak threatening total annihilation, Earth had to stand its ground. Carter had always been a man of action, but the mounting pressure of defending Earth had started to chip away at his resolve. He wasn't just a soldier. He was the leader, the one who had to make impossible decisions. And with each passing day, as the Zarnak blockade tightened, doubt began to creep into his mind. Could humanity really win this fight? The Zarnak's power was overwhelming, their technology beyond anything Earth had encountered. Yet Carter knew that retreat was not an option. If Earth were to survive, it would have to fight, and it would have to do so with everything it had. The leadership of Earth remained divided, some still hoping for a diplomatic solution, while Carter knew that time was running out. War seemed inevitable, but his heart was heavy with the weight of what that meant. Was he prepared to lead them into the fires of battle? Was he prepared to face the terrifying reality of the unknown, to risk everything for the future of humanity? The tension on the bridge was palpable. Carter's crew, a diverse mix of military personnel and scientists, stood by, waiting for orders. Their faces mirrored his own anxiety, fear mixed with a steely determination. The intercom crackled, and the voice of the fleet's intelligence officer came through. "Captain, the Zarnak have transmitted their ultimatum: surrender or face full-scale invasion." The words felt like a cold slap in the face. Earth had always been a peaceful planet, focused on progress and cooperation. But now the galaxy was a battleground. The Zarnak didn't want a negotiation. They wanted to see humanity bow before them. The implications were clear. Earth's survival was at stake. A flicker of hope had burned bright in the darkness of Earth's early resistance, but the reality of their powerlessness was stark. The first major confrontation in Earth's orbit was a disaster. Carter's fleet, though led by his brilliant tactics, was simply outmatched. The Zarnak ships were enormous, their weaponry far more advanced than anything humanity could muster. Missiles streaked through space, and Earth's shields buckled under the force of the assault. The atmosphere was chaos. Carter barked orders as his ship shook violently. His eyes remained locked on the view screen, but there was nothing he could do. Earth's ships were overwhelmed, scattered by the sheer might of the Zarnak fleet. Carter knew that failure here would mean extinction. The feeling of helplessness, of watching his fleet fall apart, gnawed at him. They had prepared for many things, but never this. And still, Carter clung to the glimmer of hope that humanity's strength lay not in its technology, but in its will to fight. As Earth's fleet staggered under the onslaught, Carter knew that it wasn't over. In the final moments, as the battle seemed lost, he made a decision. A desperate one, but one that could turn the tide. He activated the experimental weapon, a last-ditch attempt to hit the Zarnak where it hurt. The weapon was humanity's ace in the hole, designed by Earth's best engineers, but untested in actual combat. Carter didn't hesitate. He ordered the counterattack. The weapon unleashed a devastating surge of energy, bypassing the Zarnak's shields and hitting their flagship. For a moment, it was as though time itself had stopped. The Zarnak fleet reeled from the shock, retreating into the void as they scrambled to regroup. Earth's forces had surprised them. For the first time, humanity had gained the upper hand, and in that fleeting victory, Earth saw what they were capable of. It was a small win, but it was enough to show the Zarnak that humanity would not go down without a fight. The battle was far from over, but for the first time, humanity had forced the enemy to retreat. The damage, however, was immense. Earth's fleet had taken heavy casualties, and the Zarnak's true strength had been revealed. Carter's counterattack had proven that Earth was not to be underestimated, but the road ahead was uncertain. The Zarnak may have retreated, but they were far from defeated. The universe was full of unknown dangers, and Carter knew that humanity's struggle for survival had only just begun. But one thing was clear. Earth's will to fight, its ingenuity and resilience, had proved that even against impossible odds, humanity could survive. The battle may have been lost, but the war had only just begun. The hum of the engines filled the vast, silent expanse of space, the eerie quiet broken only by the occasional flicker of static from the comm systems. Earth's fleet, outgunned and outclassed, remained in tight formation, its resolve growing with each passing hour. The once peaceful space stations orbiting Earth now stood as somber reminders of the stakes they faced. The blockade was tightening, and with it, humanity's worst fears were beginning to take shape. The Zarnak Empire, a ruthless military power with technology that dwarfed anything Earth had developed, moved with chilling precision. Their ships, colossal and imposing, loomed on the outskirts of Earth's defenses, their presence a suffocating cloud that blotted out the stars. Earth had tried to negotiate, to find a peaceful resolution, but the Zarnak's refusal to even engage in meaningful talks had shattered any illusions of diplomacy. Carter, with his tactical brilliance, knew that the Zarnak's true intentions were darker than anyone had predicted. It wasn't just Earth's military that was in danger, it was humanity itself. The Zarnak were preparing to launch devastating strikes on Earth's colonies, their goal far more sinister than a political standoff. Earth was vulnerable, surrounded, and humanity's survival now rested on the razor's edge. Carter stood at the command console, staring out at the fleet. In front of him, his fingers drummed nervously on the side of the chair, his mind racing with the weight of the impending war. The odds were overwhelming, the enemy was vast, and yet there was something inside him that refused to accept defeat. Humanity had survived far worse. They were resilient, they adapted, they fought, but as Carter scanned the faces of his crew, he could feel the gnawing sense of dread creeping in. His own resolve was beginning to crack, and he wasn't sure if he could carry them all through this. The comm system came to life with a harsh crackle, breaking his thoughts. The voice of Earth's High Command came through, urgent and panicked. "Captain Carter, we've received the ultimatum. The Zarnak give us no choice but surrender." "They're not negotiating. Their fleet is already in position." Carter's hand clenched into a fist. He knew this day would come, the one where humanity was no longer just a curious anomaly in the galaxy, but a target for extinction. But the thought of surrender, of letting the Zarnak have their way, filled him with an anger he hadn't felt in years. "We fight," Carter said, his voice steady. "Prepare the fleet for battle." Earth's first major battle unfolded before their eyes. The sleek, powerful ships of Earth's fleet met the monstrous, unrelenting Zarnak fleet in Earth's orbit. It was an uneven match from the start. The Zarnak's advanced weapons decimated Earth's defenses with terrifying precision. Carter's orders were sharp, quick, desperate, but even his tactical genius couldn't overcome the sheer power of the enemy. Explosions erupted, shields shattered, and Earth's fleet was slowly but surely overwhelmed. Every strike felt like a blow to his chest, every casualty a wound in his soul. But Carter, ever the soldier, pushed forward. The battle was a disaster, but the war was not over. As the Zarnak forces pressed forward, Carter's eyes narrowed. He had a plan, a risky one, but it was the only chance they had. He activated Earth's new experimental weapon, something no one had dared test in combat. The energy from the weapon surged across space, bypassing the Zarnak's impenetrable shields. For a moment, there was silence, and then the Zarnak flagship shuddered, a blinding light enveloping it. The Zarnak retreated, unsure of what had just happened. It wasn't a victory, but it was a surprise, a crack in the Zarnak's invulnerability, a momentary spark of hope for humanity. As the Zarnak withdrew, Earth's fleet limped back to base, damaged but not broken. Carter stood on the bridge, looking at the damage reports, the faces of his crew. His heart was heavy, his mind clouded with questions. They had survived this battle, but what came next? The Zarnak were retreating, but for how long? And how many? More battles would humanity have to face before they could finally secure their place in the galaxy. But for the first time since the blockade began, Carter allowed himself a small moment of hope. The Zarnak were not invincible. Humanity could fight back. The spark of resistance had been lit, and Carter knew it was only the beginning. The dark, expansive space stretches out before Captain Elias Carter, his gaze locked on the vast fleet of Zarnak warships. Earth's forces, small in comparison, hover at the edge of Earth's atmosphere. The stakes couldn't be higher. Every ship under Carter's command, every soldier, every commander in the crew understands the weight of the moment. The Zarnak fleet is massive, their weaponry beyond anything Earth has ever faced, yet the human spirit is undeterred. Carter's mind races, his strategies already in motion, yet there is no time for hesitation. "Ready all units," Carter orders, his voice steady despite the storm raging inside him. "We're not just fighting for Earth, we're fighting for everything we've built." The Zarnak launch the first wave, their ships cutting through space with terrifying speed. Earth's ships retaliate, but the Zarnak's overwhelming firepower is a reminder of the odds they face. The opening shots are a violent symphony of explosions. Carter's mind never wavers, each move calculated with precision as the Zarnak's strategy begins to falter. Human ingenuity, the ability to adapt and overcome, is on full display. Despite the odds, Earth strikes back with a ferocity that surprises even the Zarnak. Carter and his crew exploit every weakness, using the Zarnak's own arrogance against them. They've underestimated humanity's resolve, and now the tide begins to shift just slightly, but enough to ignite hope in the hearts of those watching from Earth's war room. They might just have a chance, but the battle is far from over. "Prepare the charge," Carter says, voice low but his determination palpable. As his fleet takes up positions, the calm before the storm is shattered once again by the Zarnak's relentless assault. But humanity's spirit is unwavering. They're not just defending their planet, they're proving that they can stand toe-to-toe with the galaxy's most powerful forces. Carter's tactical brilliance has brought humanity a glimmer of hope. But with that hope comes an unbearable responsibility. His mind races as he formulates a desperate, bold plan. The Zarnak flagship, a monstrous ship, the heart of their fleet, remains untouched, its shields impenetrable. He knows that without it, the Zarnak's command structure would collapse. "We can't win without it," Carter mutters to his second-in-command, Commander Lyra, as they survey the battle map. "We go after the flagship." The plan is reckless, the risks are astronomical, but Carter has no choice. He turns to his crew, their faces a mix of fear and determination. "We either take down that flagship, or we lose everything." The plan is set. A small team, led by Carter, will board the flagship and plant a bomb that could cripple its defenses. but time is running out. As they prepare to launch their suicidal mission, one of Carter's most trusted allies, Lieutenant Voss, volunteers to lead the charge into the heart of the Zarnak ship. "I'll do it, Captain," Voss says, voice unwavering. "This is what we're here for." Carter hesitates, but he knows there's no other choice. "You're sure?" Voss nods. "I've never been more sure of anything in my life. It's a final, desperate gamble." As they make their way to the flagship, the tension is thick, the fate of humanity resting on their shoulders. The Zarnak are relentless, but so is Earth's will to survive. Carter's heart pounds in his chest. This could be the end for them, but it's the only way forward. The sound of the blast is deafening. Voss, in a final, selfless act, detonates the explosive, ripping through the core of the flagship. The Zarnak's once impenetrable ship shudders, cracks, and falls into chaos. The heart of their fleet is dead, and with it, their command structure. But the victory comes at a cost. The flagship's destruction sends shockwaves across the battlefield, throwing both fleets into disarray. Carter's crew watches in horror as their own ships take the brunt of the retaliation. Voss's sacrifice, along with the loss of so many others, weighs heavily on Carter's heart. He stares out at the space, watching the retreating Zarnak ships. The battle is won, but the price is unimaginable. He whispers to himself, his voice broken. "We've won, but at what cost?" The retreat of the Zarnak is a bittersweet victory. The remnants of their fleet scatter, leaving Earth battered but standing. Humanity has held its ground for now. Carter stands in the ruins of the bridge, eyes tired but determined. "It's over," Lyra says, her voice soft, reflecting the weight of the moment. "But it doesn't feel like it." Carter nods, his mind still racing. "It's just beginning. The Zarnak are retreating, but they're not gone. We need to prepare. Humanity stands victorious, but the future remains uncertain. The war has taken a heavy toll, and the cost of victory is written in the ashes of Earth's capital and the lives lost. Carter knows that the peace they've won is fragile, and the next chapter in humanity's fight for survival has already begun. The war was over, but its scars remained, etched deeply across the face of Earth. Carter stood before the shattered remnants of Earth's capital, the once thriving city now reduced to rubble. In the distance, the twisted skeletons of ruined buildings rose like broken monuments to the cost of victory. Humanity had survived, but the price had been steep. The losses were staggering, both in lives and in the destruction of infrastructure. The once beautiful cities of Earth now looked like a war-torn wasteland. Yet through it all, humanity stood resilient. The Zarnak fleet had retreated, but the consequences of their assault lingered. Carter's heart was heavy as he surveyed the devastation. His thoughts were a whirlwind, torn between the immense victory and the staggering losses. "We survived," he whispered. "But at what cost?" The once proud fleet of Earth lay scattered and broken. The spaceports were in disarray, ships in various stages of repair. The intergalactic alliances, which had once viewed Earth with indifference, now saw humanity through a different lens. Fear and respect, but also wariness. Earth had proven its strength, but what now? Would they be able to rebuild? Or would the scars of this war linger forever? As Carter stared out over the ruins, his mind wandered back to the sacrifice of his comrades, the countless lives lost in the battle. It was a bittersweet victory. He had led humanity to survive, but the cost was far higher than anyone had imagined. The weight of the past few days crushed him. Each decision, each life lost, carried with it the burden of the future. And there was no turning back. "Sir, we've secured the capital." Commander Lyra's voice broke through his thoughts. She stood beside him, her face somber but resolute. Carter turned to her, his eyes weary. "It's over for now. But what about the future?" His voice was low, filled with uncertainty. Earth had won the battle, but the war was not truly over. The galaxy was full of dangers, and the victory had come at a cost. Lyra's gaze softened. "We rebuild. We continue what we started." She paused. "And we make sure that we're never in this position again." The days after the battle felt like a blur. Carter found himself surrounded by political leaders, military officials, and diplomats. The war was over, but Earth's new role in the galaxy was just beginning to take shape. They were no longer an insignificant planet caught in the crossfire of galactic empires. Earth had proven its strength and resolve. Carter was offered the highest honors, a prestigious leadership position, one that would make him a key figure in galactic diplomacy. But as he stood before the Council, the weight of responsibility pressed down on him. He knew that true strength lay not in titles or power, but in the people who had fought beside him. "I can't do this alone," Carter said, his voice resolute. "It was my crew, my team, that brought us through this. Together we survived, together we'll rebuild." The Council, recognizing the depth of Carter's leadership, nodded in agreement. Carter wasn't just a symbol of military strength. He was a symbol of the unity that had carried humanity through the darkest of times. As Earth began its recovery, Carter's crew stood at the forefront of rebuilding efforts. The damage was immense, but Earth's resolve was even stronger. The cities, once broken, began to rise again, like phoenixes from the ashes. Earth's military was restructured, its fleet rebuilt and modernized, prepared to defend against whatever threats might come next. New alliances were forged with previously distant species, and Earth's role in galactic diplomacy began to take shape. The once crippled Earth fleet, now a symbol of unity and strength, was ready to defend humanity's newfound place among the stars. But with this new power came new challenges. Earth's presence on the galactic stage was no longer ignored. The Intergalactic Council, a network of civilizations that had once viewed Earth as weak and unworthy, now recognized the planet's potential. Earth was no longer an underdog. It was a force to be reckoned with. The galaxy had taken notice of humanity's strength, but with it came the inevitable complexities of diplomacy and survival in a galaxy full of powerful, unpredictable forces. But even as Earth stood victorious, the future remained uncertain. The ancient relic that had played a pivotal role in the war still held many secrets. Its true potential had not been fully realized, and its mysteries lingered. Carter and his crew knew their journey was far from over. They had faced one crisis, but new ones were sure to follow. The galaxy was vast, filled with unknown dangers and opportunities. As Carter stood before the Council, his eyes turned to the stars. The road ahead was unclear, but the promise of new discoveries and challenges lay before them. The Zarnak were no longer a threat, but the galaxy was full of untold mysteries. The future was unwritten. "We've won the war," Carter said quietly, his voice filled with determination. "But the real journey is just beginning." The stars above Earth felt different now. Once they were a distant mystery, an unreachable void filled with potential danger. But after the war, after the defeat of the Zarnak, humanity stood on the edge of a new age, one that no one could have predicted. Earth was no longer just a small, unremarkable planet in the vast expanse of space. It was a player, a force that could shape the future of the galaxy. Carter stood on the bridge of his ship, gazing at the expanse of space before him. The glow of distant stars flickered in the window, a quiet reminder of the infinite possibilities that lay ahead. The galaxy, once an intimidating and uncaring expanse, now felt like a canvas waiting to be painted with humanity's mark. But that same galaxy was full of unanswered questions. What other threats lay in the shadows? What alliances would humanity forge? And, perhaps most troubling, What would be expected of them now that they had proven themselves a force to be reckoned with? The Zarnak had been vanquished, their ships scattered and retreating into the void, but their departure left a chilling silence. The victory, hard-earned and bittersweet, had propelled humanity into a new era, and with that came the uncertainty of what humanity's true role would be. Earth was no longer a victim, but was it ready to rise? Across the galaxy, eyes were watching. There was a mixture of awe, fear, and calculation. The Zarnak had been an ancient power, and their defeat at the hands of a species so young was a shocking display of strength. Humanity's rise had disrupted the long-standing balance of galactic power. Would Earth continue to grow, asserting itself as a force of peace and cooperation? Or would other civilizations see it as a new threat to the stability they had carefully constructed over eons? In the council chambers of the Intergalactic Federation, murmurs of uncertainty rippled through the ranks of powerful species. Some, like the Kixen, respected humanity's tenacity, while others, such as the coldly calculating Velari, wondered how much influence this young species could truly wield. They had seen the devastation humanity could unleash in desperation, and they would not forget that. The galaxy's long history was filled with violent upheaval, and it was clear that Earth's place within that history was only just beginning to unfold. Yet, for Carter and his crew, the challenge was clear. The unknown awaited them, and they would face it with the same bravery and ingenuity that had brought them this far. The Zarnak threat had been a galvanizing force for humanity. Now, with that war behind them, Earth's focus shifted from survival to exploration. Carter, once burdened with the weight of defense, now stood at the precipice of a new kind of leadership, one that would guide humanity into the unknown. It was no longer about fighting off invaders. It was about reaching out into the stars, forming alliances and discovering new worlds. He stood before the crew, now composed of seasoned veterans and eager new explorers, ready to take the next step. The future, once defined by fear and defense, was now marked by the promise of exploration. Humanity was about to become more than a footnote in the annals of galactic history. It was about to write its own chapter. "We're not just defending anymore," Carter said, his voice steady but full of purpose. "We're going out there to learn, to build, to make sure that what happened to us never happens again." The room was quiet, but in the eyes of his crew there was a spark of excitement. They were ready. The future awaited. The new dawn of humanity was bright, but it was also fraught with challenges. As Earth's fleet began to rebuild and strengthen, new diplomatic efforts were underway. Humanity had proven itself in war, but now it needed to prove that it could lead in peace. The Council of Galactic Powers that once ignored Earth now looked to it as an equal. Diplomatic meetings were scheduled. Alliances were forged. Trade routes began to open. Yet, for all the potential, the path forward was not without its risks. Old grudges simmered beneath the surface, and the galaxy was not a peaceful place. The unknown dangers that had once seemed distant were now at humanity's doorstep. The forces of the galaxy's older civilizations had been disturbed by the rise of Earth, and Carter knew that a new form of diplomacy, one of strength and wisdom, would be needed to navigate the treacherous waters ahead. As Earth's place in the galaxy solidified, Carter reflected on the journey humanity had made. From the edge of annihilation to becoming a force for peace, humanity's transformation was staggering. The legacy of the Zarnak War would be felt for generations to come, but the question remained: what would humanity's legacy truly be? They had risen from the ashes of war, but what would they do with the power they now held? The galaxy was vast, full of secrets and untold stories, But humanity's story was just beginning, and as Carter stood once more before the vastness of space, he realized that the future was not something they had to fear. It was something they could shape. "The road ahead is uncertain," he said quietly, "but it's ours to walk, together." With that, the ship began to move forward, toward the unknown, into the future where anything was possible. The galaxy was no longer a distant, indifferent expanse. It was home, and humanity was ready to make its mark.